is home and you want to raise your children there. Like, how did you make that decision? Because you could have gone back to Nigeria, right, with your wife, and you say, oh, I want to raise my children here with the help that you definitely saw back home. At what point and why did you say, okay, this is where it's going to be home and this is where I'm going to have and raise my children?
I think it was a combination of many things. So one, I felt like it was a God ordained that we found ourselves in the UK. Many things led to another, and then my wife didn't have a visa initially. She had to work for 18 months without being paid, because she couldn't be paid because she had a visa. But eventually her visa came through. Now she's a British citizen. So I think there were some things that aligned for us that just made us want to make Britain home.
Hi everyone, how are you doing? This is Day for the Now That We're Here podcast. This is part 2 of the podcast with Mr Sola, and this time we'll talk a bit more about raising a family abroad, career growth, building generational wealth, and culture in a new country. I really enjoyed this episode and I hope you do too. Forgive me, there's some issues with the audio in this episode, but you know what? Enjoy it and let me know in the comment section below. Mr. Sola is currently a global VP. He's a coach, he's a speaker, he's a pastor. He wears a lot of hats, and this conversation was also like that. I learned a lot of things from this conversation. So yeah, listen and let me know how it goes. Enjoy.
But we also knew that to do that, there are some things we had to do. So we got advice from older people than us who talked about private education, how the education system doesn't favor black children, how you have to hunker down and pay for private education. And I know not everybody can do it, but we were fortunate to be able to do that. And we also had a prophetic word, like, give your children the best education you can afford. So that was my guiding principle. So I think sending my kid to private school and seeing the opportunities that opened with them as I studied the UK, the dynamic of the culture, we felt that it was good to raise our kids. Now, a twist happened. My son was 30. One day he came to me and said, Dad, why can't I just go to the closest school here? Why am I doing common entrance? Why am I that? Other people, even in church, they're dressing themselves this month. They're not even going to university. Why are you forcing me to university? So then I made up my mind. I felt it was God whisper. This boy, you're going to Nigeria. So we need to go home and realize that actually education, some people have to, my wife will say, we have to hawk tomatoes in the morning, get him to go to school that day.
Mm-hmm.
So we shipped him off to Nigeria. He hated the first, but he spent 3 years there. He would say that was the most defining period of it. Fully understood who he was. Like, we had brought up our kids in Britain. The system kind of messed with their mind a little bit, because the system tells you that this is the only thing black people can do. This is what you see black people doing.
Yeah. So
I realized that actually they needed an injection of a different perspective. And I remember my son saying something, Dad, when I was in private school in the UK, I met with people who were pilots, who their dads were pilots. So when I got to Nigeria, I met people whose father owned airlines. So he had a different perspective on wealth, and I actually gave him a very rich cultural tradition. I actually feared at one point that he was going to marry a white, and I was submitted to that because he had only dated white. But in the end, when it happened, he married a Nigerian girl that loves Nigeria, is culturally fitting into Nigeria. They went for Yoruba lessons and stuff like that. So, God knows the desires of our heart. To me, I was open. I was like, God, to me, I'm just custodian. So if you want, is this what you want? Fine. But, I would say that God's will prevail, not ours, right? I don't know. I still have 2 girls who know which way they can go, but I'm very open. Whatever way it is, I'm open. That's why you have to imbibe the culture of the place that you. What does a British person do? What is the British culture? It's not just the culture you see. What is the Berlin culture? The real Berlin culture. People think that imitate the Berlin culture. No, you need to come out to like Wannsee, Potsdam, and see how the real rich of Berlin live, and you'll be amazed at actually it's not all gra. Like there are places that are better than Ikoyi in Berlin. But if you live only in the city, you'll be like, no, they can't. Even in Hamburg, there are places that, man, mansion, see gates. You will see, before you will see the house, you'll be seeing gate. So I say that to say this, that I think, and then once it was working for my son, we sent my girls also. So their mom went with them. So all our kids spent 3 years in Nigeria, in the Nigerian education system, learning the culture. So that now, how many years later, my kids can say, okay, as you're planning holidays, are we going to Nigeria? And actually, this last year, my son and his wife went to Nigeria by themselves without us. So, and they're willing to take their friends to Nigeria, right? So, yeah, it's a long time that we decided once we realized that this is where we want to settle, and we just kind of went with it. So when we now moved to Germany, people were shocked that why would you leave a culture that you're well versed in? And again, it was more God opened the door, and we felt it was the right thing. And actually, I can say my best career life, my most fulfilling.
Nice. We'll talk about your career a little bit more.
Okay.
Well, when you were deciding about the UK for like your family, because this is a fear that I do have, just as you said, knowing the culture of I don't know the culture of this place. I know that my view is very limited. Because first of all, I don't speak German yet. But also, I know that there's more there, like the rich people there. Where's the banana island of Berlin, for example?
Yeah.
Where's the Queen? All of those things. I don't quite know the nuances here. And I have some, I would say like fear or skepticism about having and raising children here. I would be very, very motivated as I am right now with the knowledge I have. Of course, it will grow eventually. But if I do have children that are German, I don't know if I would know who those people are. They won't. I'm so grounded and rooted in my Nigerian culture. I literally just know that if I do now have my family and my children that are now something else or identify as something else, I don't think I will be able to relate or identify with them. Did you kind of like have that fear that, I'm going to be raising British children and these children will not understand the meaning of, I don't know, there are just some Nigerian nuances that you're like, what? You feel like I have some conversations. I just look at my siblings and we know, I know exactly what we know what we mean. Did you feel like you would lose that with your children?
So, cliche answers to start with, then I'll build it out. So, first of all, you have to start with what is God telling you? Right, honestly, I don't mean that as a cliche. I really mean it. Like you really have to say, okay, God, what are you telling me about my kids? And some of that you might learn through observations, through many different things. Like which school should they go to? How much should I invest in their private education? Why would I send my son to this particular school, not that particular? So I think that's the starting point. It's like really taking the time to really ask God, like, where? And then I think the challenge with is, I think a lot of people who have that fear, they raise their kid in fear, and they don't want them to be too Nigerian, they don't want them to be too German, and then the kids lose their identity. So what we tried to do was go whole in. You're a British Nigerian, so from the onset they knew they were Nigerian. So you're British Nigerian, and then we took them to Nigeria. We made them experience Nigeria, the good side, the bad side. We made them experience. We made going to Nigeria as a really destination so they could integrate, understand family, understand culture. As much as because they're going to assimilate school, watching TV. So, the privilege of watching my kids sometimes when they get together, maybe at Christmas, and my son's wife, they start speaking pidgin to each other. Because they can. They have a Nigerian heritage. So I think now, and I say this with caution, because again, it's not a formula. It worked for me, it's going to work for other people, right? And so that's why you have to find out what is the plan of God for your children's lives. Because if you know what that is, some children would never go back to Nigeria, ever, because that's God's plan for them. Other children would like to live in both countries. Other children would be strong German speaking, but yet can boss out in Nigeria. So I think it is the nurture that so if you're a sheltered Nigerian German, kids are to most probably shelter. Starting point. Okay? Now, God can work miracles and do all sorts of things, but I think it's if you lead with curiosity, right? There's some amazing documentaries to watch. There's a documentary called How the Rich of Berlin Live, or the Rich of Germany Live. It just gives you a real insight into how German money is in family. A lot of businesses are owned by families. BMW is owned by Mercedes-Benz is owned by Porsche is owned by family. FIBA and G is owned by a family. I mention any of these big companies, they're all owned by a family. BMW is owned by Volkswagen is owned by So it begins to tell you that, okay, in this culture, generational wealth is the main driver. And I ask myself, how am I building generational wealth for my children? If I don't want my children to get to graduation and they're living in this country further, they can't compete because they're competing with people who are like above them. It's the first. And second thing is that, like, we knew that our kids were not going to go to university in Germany because they're already British. They like the British culture. My youngest dabbled with maybe going to Amsterdam, but she knew enough. She prayed with her youth pastor. She knew enough that she's going back to the UK. So I think teaching your children also to find, and I have this view that up until 18, you're under me. You have to do your A-levels. After that, if you want to go to university, then you know. If you want to do double degree, it's on you. If you want to go straight out, I'm not going to control that, right? But up until 18, I'm going to do my duty because I learned from a British guy that there are many people competing in the world. So I'm going to give my children the best starts. And he's the one that statement convinced me to send my kid to private school. So this is a white guy in a white community in a very posh area saying to me, I want to give my child the best head start. And the way to do that is sending them to private education. Now, I know that not everybody can do that, right? And even to send kids to private education means a lot of sacrifice. You can buy houses for the cost of private education, right? And then when your son tells you at 13 that, why did you waste your money?
Am I doing this? Like, yeah.
So I do think, it's a long answer to your question. I do think you really need to find out who you are, where you are going, how you bring your children into this. And you have to be aware that changes and evolves. Let me give you an example. A friend of mine, he lives in Africa. He's from Zambia. And his son, they're all in South Africa. They've traveled around the world. His son just woke up one morning and said, Dad, I'm waiting. I don't have the money. He said, don't worry, I'll find scholarship. So he found a full scholarship. And he went to America first. Guess what? This year, his father just received a job offer, But he saw it first. And because his father takes a view like I do, like, just get it. This boy has made a way for himself. Is it possible to get this full scholarship? Not partial, full scholarship, which flies back home. Why are we to block? So therefore, he doubled down his efforts to find a job in America. And he got one. So sometimes, God can lead us through our children also. Directions they take.
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Actually, what you said about knowing where you're going to, and then knowing how you carry your children with you there. That's actually very profound because you have children doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your life, right?
Yeah.
So for example, if my purpose is not in Nigeria, because I want my children to be in Nigeria, I will not go sit down there and just be raising them there just because I want them to be Nigerian. So that's
take for example, when we moved to Germany, my son, who was in his final year of university, we didn't move him. We could have, but we didn't move him. It was like, boy, your destiny is here. There's no point in me moving you to move to Germany because, like, you already got 1 year to go. You're already charting your own course. You already become local champion. Then stay. So, so I think listening, going on a journey with your children also does help because you don't know when your paths actually divert or converge, we might end up moving from Germany to Bristol, who knows? So, but it wouldn't be by choice. It would be more like the logical kids there. So God, that way you would like us to be. As God says no, that's kind of where I would be targeted. So I think, there's a lot. And actually it unfolds because there's all sorts of things that happen with a child. They're 5 years old, they're 10 years old, they're teen. They go through mood swings. you need to understand your children, because it doesn't work.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you. So yeah, so talking about so moving on a little bit from your family to now your career. You had like a very long career. You summarized it at the beginning with your introduction. I think for me, what would you say is something that you did that really helped you build like a global career? Because you're still an immigrant, right? No matter how you see it. And I do meet immigrants, people that have been here. At least I've met 2 people that have been here for like 15, 17 years. I do try to have conversations with them, especially if I see that they're black or they're older. Most of the time they turn out to be Nigerian. And I'm like, this guy, you've been here for 17 years. I'm like, what do you do? And he told me what he did. And I was just like, I understand. Like, he basically explained how he had to move from country to country. But I was like, those are kind of like the story. So because he think basically most of what he does like Uber. And he hadn't really had a career, so he had done a couple of things and was very happy to share his experience, which I was happy about. But I don't really hear a lot of like Nigerian immigrants striving and getting to the top of their careers as they grow in age outside the country. It's easy to see, like you said, the owner of an airline in Nigeria. But outside Nigeria, where are they? Where are the Nigerians that own airlines, right? And living in the UK or in America. So just to sum up everything I've said, it's more like, what particular thing did you like do, or did you know, or did you hear about, like, that helped you to really say, this is how I'm going to build my career? That helped you to get to the point, you're a VP now, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
That helps you get to the point you are at now. You're also able to pay for private school for your children. You're able to move. You definitely had like mobility of life, which is not very popular out there, or at least I haven't heard so many stories. I'm sure there are more people out there. So just you telling yours, what would you say that has been for you?
I think it's partly how you start, right? So when I started my career in the UK, remember I was wearing a security guard uniform. And I remember one day, one guy walked up to me and my colleague, who was an electrical engineer from Sudan. We were both working security in a cold car park. The guy who walks up to us, looks us in the eye and says, "You would never be able to afford it." He was driving a Volkswagen Polo. You're just like, what? What's your beef? What's your... And then I made up my mind. That very day, I was like, never going to let the uniform I wear define who I am. The fact that I'm wearing a security guard. I'm a civil graduate from the University of Ife. The fact that I'm doing security doesn't change. Doesn't change the fact that if you tell me to build a road, I can build that road for you, because that's what I started. I think that's probably where it started. It still started in this self-belief. And I was privileged, I would say. So, hold on. I also say one thing, because if I don't say this, people will get the wrong idea. So, remember, I had privilege, right? So, we talk about privilege in different ways, but for me, I had privilege. I was born in Britain, so I had a British passport from the get-go. So, I had that privilege. And the question is, I'm not the only one that has that privilege, and I never wanted to use that privilege. It was the furthest thing. Came to Nigeria when I was 8. I never left the country until I left to follow my fiancée. So I never went on holiday. I had no desire. I was like, been there, done that, not interested. So I think that's the starting point, that, okay, I had a little bit of privilege that I could just walk into the UK and get a job. But then, I'm not the only one with a British passport. There are a lot of people with British passports that are not taking advantage of what's in front of them. So the first thing I would say is that I think one of the things that helped was curiosity. Why is that person a better security guard? Why is that person paid more than? Not in, but more like, okay, if I'm going to be a security, Bible says whatever you might do it as on. So I took security and I wanted to be the best. The next thing, when I went for my university, graduate placement university, my first proper job, if you like, the guy said, "I see from your CV that you've only done security for the last 18. I'm going to change the interview around. Tell me how you will secure this university." And I'm thinking to myself, if I had just done security because I was just walking through it, I would have failed that interview. But because I had done it, I had studied it, did it, I guess I added some James Harley Chase, some novels I read, some James Bond movies, but the guy literally walked out, said, got the job, and on Monday I'm going to implement 2 of the things you just told me. Right? But also for that interview, I did something in my application. Remember, by now I've applied for hundreds of jobs. So I've applied for this job. This was a positive action for African Caribbean people in the state. They said the box called Other. Other box I wrote, I will give you 101% commitment. And that's what got the deputy director, John Wilson, said, I need to fit this guy. What do you mean by 101% commitment? So, and then 3 years later, when I was leaving the university, he brought out my application form and said, we can all testify that this guy did 101%.
Oh, he can?
Yeah, he did. He brought it to my leaving. I've signed it in my card, which I still have today. So the point I'm trying to make, without tell too many stories, is that curiosity is number one. Number two is love the company you work for. If you don't love the company you work for, find another job quick. Because if you don't love the company you work for, you're not going to rise very far. Right? And I would say, find the point in your career where money is less important than career progression. Don't get me wrong. I've always changed for either the same salary or more, but I do think sometimes you need to make a sacrifice to be able to say, okay, this is the journey I want to go on, and therefore I'm going to make a sacrifice. I leave this job and go to this job. And then I think number four, if I'm you meet mentors and coaches. Like my success in my career was because my story littered mentors with career coaches. And I always distinguish between a job mentor and a career mentor. A lot of us have job mentors. Your line manager is probably your job mentor. They just want to make you do your job better. They're not thinking about where you're going to be in 5 years' time. They don't have to, because they're just thinking about how you're going to do your current job better. But when I got to GlaxoSmithKline, when I was working as a programmer, I sat down with a lady called Joan. She said, 5 years from now, where do you want? Like, it's not an interview. I'm just saying, what do you want to be doing in 5 years? Then work your way backward. I always use that now with my mentee. 5 years from now, where do you want to be? Then work your way backward. And if you don't know where you want to be in 5 years' time, let's stop talking. You know exactly. That's it.
Interesting. So did you have any black mentors you looked to while you were in the UK? Did you try to look for, or you were just not interested? You just like
I think the higher I got, the more impossible. Like the company I'm in right now, Globe, top 100, the only black female.
Yeah. Did that do anything for you? Did you feel like because of this I have to, or did you feel like, I don't know, did that bring up any negative or positive emotion to you? Because sometimes it's weird, because you're like, do these people have space for black people? Or is it that black people are not doing enough to get to the top here? I don't know, how does that make you feel sometimes?
I think, if I'm honest, I think I stopped seeing color in the workplace when I started proficiency. My proficiency, their proficiency. So I was lucky that I just was in places where people I was working with were very proficient. So I was like, okay, if I can do my job as well as they do their job, then I'll get ahead. So I probably way back, I made up my mind that actually, and don't get me wrong, I do believe there's prejudice. I've been prejudiced against in work. And I have left jobs because they told me that you're not going to go any further because you're black. So I have had that. But in the midst of all of that, it hasn't stopped me saying, what's the scene in here? And I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to use everything around to help me get it. And that's including prayer, my faith, my spirit, my hard work. You know, I joke about when I was leaving the college, university, I decided I wanted to become a programmer. I went for an interview at the College of Law. I aced the oral interview. They were like, dude, when do you start? Well, before you go, you need to do a technical interview. Now, remember, I self-taught myself how to program. I didn't go to any school. I taught myself. So, going to the test, there's 10 questions. I'm telling you, Andy, I could answer none. I didn't even understand the question. So my boss comes in and says, oh, you're not writing. I said, I don't understand. I'm sorry. And he proceeds to take me through question by question. I said, okay, how did you learn programming? I said, I learned it this way. So if you learned it that way, think of it that way. But what you were doing there, the user interface, this is what it means. So he basically taught me 6 questions.
During the exam?
Yeah, during the exam. Literally taught me 6 questions. Right? I mean, he wasn't giving me the answer. He was just saying that this is the logic. This is how you convert this question that you're seeing to the user interface. You know what? Do you get it? Yes. He taught me 6 like that. And then I got 6 over 10. A week before I started the job, right? He called me to travel down. So I traveled. He said, dude, you know, after you left, we had people who got 10 that help. So, taking a bet on, please don't let. After 2.5 years, when I was awarded as the best program.
Nice. Yeah.
Because I found a need that nobody else was interested in. I used that to develop myself and become a student. So then programmers were working with me. They wanted to partner with me. So I didn't have to know how to program per se. I just needed to know how to do the user interface design. Nobody was focused on that. Everybody wanted to code. I was like, me, I want a user interface. Drag and
Yeah.
This was way before drag and drop was important. So all I'm saying is that concept of finding what are you good at, very, very, very early in my career, what are my good customer engagement? Very good. If you tell me what you do, go away and I'm good at solving your problem. I can listen to you, understand, go away, bring your solution. So by the time I found myself in consulting, it was easy peasy. Go walk into a pitch, sit there, and it's okay, I'm going to sign the check because I'm exactly what you 12 months ahead of me. This is what we did at this bank, this is what we did at this bank. So I'm just saying, if you want the solution, sign. Right? So you kind of grow in your confidence, even though in many rooms, like in many rooms, you're the only token. But I always say that I got to a stage in which I didn't see color. And then I started thinking, okay, but I need to put others up. So I started mentoring, coaching. And actually, I would say Germany, man, there's people in Germany who are fantastic, who are in 6 figures, they're doing really, really well. But people don't know about them. So that's why a community called Black in Tech that's trying to bring people together in the community, part of that community. But in the UK, you'll be surprised how many people are at the tech, right? But it's still not enough. Like in the UK, there's only 11 partners in the Big 4 consulting. 11 black partners. On the 11, I know 7. That's how small that is. Yeah. So, no, I've given you a lot of things there, but I think the main thing for me is curiosity. Not seeing a glass ceiling, even if it was there, not seeing. Always looking to build relationship with people who are more senior than you. Always build a network, because you never know when your network is going to be valuable to you. I always say your network is equal to your net worth. A lot of jobs, I would say probably, I don't want to exaggerate, maybe 15 years ago was the last time I applied for a job and got it. Every other time it's based on my network. People just call me up and say, hey, free, would you like to? Or headhunters, right? So, but that's if you have a strong network. So I would say, find a coach and mentor, a good one. Build a good network. Be curious. Don't accept NEC. When you don't accept it, guess what? You'll be breaking it without even knowing you're breaking it. At one point, I was breaking it, I didn't even know. But me, I was just going. I didn't even know. Yeah. Then people say, do you know you're the only? Really? I didn't even think about it. It's only probably after BLM that I'm beginning to really study the landscape a bit more. Say, wow. And meeting some amazing people who have done exactly that. Curiosity, great mentors. And what we're trying to do is to say, most people who are ahead, who are at this VP president level now, all had, white mentors. There's nothing wrong with that, but we need more black mentors to kind of encourage the next bit by bit.
Yeah, it is. No, I do agree. It's very important because I also, same day when I moved to Berlin, there were so many people doing amazing. And I was just like, I don't know you guys. Why are you not talking? Like, I have a friend. So one thing, when I first moved to Berlin, I had a business in Nigeria, right? And then I was like, oh, how can I bring my business to Germany? Right? And I was talking to someone and they were like, oh, you can't start a business here without having a German on board. And I'm like, So because of I want to bring a business I'm already good at, I'm already established at, and I'll need to then, it just didn't make sense to me, right? So I heard that. I also heard that Black people don't really get C-level in Germany, and I'd never really met anyone in C-level in Germany. So I was believing it subconsciously, but for me, it didn't make any sense because I'm like, why?
Yeah.
What's the reason why? Is that Black people are not speaking the language or they're not good enough? But then I started to meet a few people and nobody knows what they do. They're not even on LinkedIn. And I'm like, it's important we tell these stories because the negative stories are very out there. They're so amplified. You meet somebody and then they're asking you if you came in by boat. And I'm like, I didn't know. Why do you know that and not know that people come in via plane? Like, you should, at least, not that those stories are not valid, but you should know both of them, right? Ideally, as a normal human. Cool. Okay, so that's your career. So basically, you have always sought out like the ceiling in wherever you are and then breaking it subconsciously or not. Yeah. I think you work with a VC firm now, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say? Investing is also something that is very interesting for me, especially outside Nigeria, right? I was always used to buying like mutual funds or bonds in Nigeria. The interest rates used to be really high. I think at some point 15-20%, at least while I was still there before everything crashed. And that was kind of like a very stable way. We also have agri-tech in Nigeria where we fund farmers.
Yeah.
Different things like that. So I think for Nigerians, that's very familiar. They're familiar with it. But when we come here, it's very different, right? Like investing, having a company, thinking about startups, building houses. So since you have been in the system for a while and now this is also something you do as a career, what would you say are like the top things for like investing and like just like growing and building wealth in the diaspora? So UK, Germany, anywhere else you know that?
So like I said, I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. You need to study the community, study how people made wealth. And I tell you, there's a lot of stuff out there on it. But if I break it down to specifics, right? Number one, property. Right? So most people in the diaspora, UK, Germany, anywhere, a lot of generational wealth is tied up in properties. They buy property, they pass it on to a kid, or they buy multiple properties. So one area is to look at property. That's how generational wealth. Imagine you came from Nigeria and your father left you a house, Berlin. Everybody's scrounging for accommodation. You just walk, you have the keys, you just enter.
Yeah.
So property is very good if you're going to build generational wealth. Stocks. Nigeria, we do stocks, but we do stocks Yahoo way. Quickly enter. We don't do long-term stocks. Like, got someone like Warren Buffett, one of the richest people in the world. He never sold a single stock of Berkshire Hathaway in his life. Why? Because he believed in the long story of stocks. So think about, instead of thinking about quick money, think about money that comes over time. Right? Somebody said, you become a millionaire over time. In Nigeria, you want to just blow.
You blow. You can't blow. It's not gadget.
No, but here, you need to kind of gradual, and actually your gradual investments will pay off. I remember my first Christmas in the UK, my uncle said to me, "Shall I tell you a secret? You remember all those uncles that came back from they had 6 cars, 7 cars. Now look at them, they have no cars. You know why? Because they didn't plan for their future. They told me that, like, look, I'm putting £50 aside. I'm going to do this for the next 20 years. It's going to pay off my mortgage. Putting this aside, it's going to pay for my daughter's university education. Card aside, in 5 years, I'm going to pay off my car." He said, don't try and save big money. 50, £25. But you do it consistent. Compounding interest over time. What will happen? It starts to grow. And then 10 years from now, you go there and say, oh, look at that. £50 a month times 12, that's 600. 600 times 10, that's 6,000. With whatever interest rate you want to put it on, whether you put it in stock or something, that's 6,000, like 8,000, 9,000. Boom. Have school fees to pay. Go there, pick it up. Boom. So I think beginning to think about building generationally and for long term is very, very important. So stocks, saving money, like not too overpowered by debts. The biggest crippler for us is that we come to this country and they get debt for anything. debt to buy a toothbrush if you want. And so we gravitate to debt, and we learned money management. So we're then in debt for a very long time. So zero down on debt as much as possible. So property, number 2, stocks, shares. Number 3 is reduce debt. And then all the other things that are in between, like crypto, anything else. But again, with crypto, you're only putting 1% of your savings into crypto, not 100%, or else you'll cry. Then leveraging home. So, what I've been doing over the last 5 years now is that I have investments in Nigeria. I have my own farm that we grow cassava. So that I get to a phase in which actually I'm not sending euros to Nigeria to service, the black tax. Doing it from Nigeria. I'm generating money in Nigeria for my investments in Nigeria. My parents, my in-laws, I'm paying my brothers or whatever I want to buy. Actually, okay, you're using local money. So that way you're beginning to allow your money to be separate. And then I guess the last thing I will say is that be financially disciplined. And that means different things for different people. It means different things for my wife to me. For me, I know how much is in any of my bank accounts, right? Ask me, I'll tell you exactly how much. It's almost to the pence, because that's how I grew up. I don't even have to write it, right? But some people are different like that. They see, there's £100, the €100 in the account. I'll just spend it. Then they realize that they have a direct debit coming out, a standing order. Boom, they're overdrawn. So there are many things you can do, but I think the biggest thing, and again, recently I've seen a lot of Nigerians that are doing a job abroad. So if it works for you, it works for you. But key thing is, again, that cliche word, ask God to lead you, right? And if He does, it will work out. And I can say, stock market is a reality that sometimes you're going to lose money, sometimes you're going to win money. But if you have to stay in the long term, most stocks you're going to gain over time. And then you can buy ideas, you can buy dividend stocks, you can buy high growth stocks. And what's your risk threshold? People have a very big risk threshold. Some people want to buy a house to rent before they buy a house to live in because they want to make money, right? So there are many different things, but also all those things are determined by where you go to live. If you want a city of meter, you're not going to find it by, they're not going to spend millions. But if you decide to come out a little bit, you can buy land and build your house yourself cheaper. So there's many little things that require wisdom. I think what happens is that we are very japa, make money, go back home, show up, right? To some degree. Or we're in the mindset of there's not enough to go around, so if I make it now, I'm going to spend, right? So we're not planning long. And when we come to investment, we're looking for, I have a lot of people that come to me, we're looking for angel investment. Okay, yeah. Where's your product? We get money with build product. The market has changed. The market, people are not sponsoring ideas anymore. They're sponsoring MVPs. Where's your MVP? Do you have an MVP? No, I don't.
Yeah.
I can't help you. But I've just made an idea.
People do that. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. I have an idea that's going to be bigger than Facebook. I say, really? Bless you. Right? So, maybe you're right. I don't know. If you watch Shark Tank long enough, you know that some people, but I think at the end of the day, just to know yourself, know that people that did it before you, people like Flutterwave or Opay, all these guys, they didn't have two heads, or Calendly, or the best failure stopped them. They pushed through. That's where they are today. So yeah, I think that a lot in there just said, but people can choose from it what works for them. And and also when you're changing jobs, you need to understand the lay of the land. So we change job, negotiate an sign-on bonus, you don't negotiate the bonus, negotiate long-term incentives, all these things. Our local colleagues, they know these things, so they put it in place. They make it conditional service. You are just happy that you got a job, take advantage of other people, and you realize actually when you get in, that's what you negotiated when you came in. So
that actually did happen to me. And the only reason I knew was I mistakenly saw spreadsheets of people's salaries. And by earning this much. And then I decided to ask some people. I said, how much do you? That's something that people don't do in Nigeria. And people are very happy to tell me how much they earn. Yeah. Some people were. I was just like, okay, now I'm being grossly underpaid. And now I know. But I find that I could have gone like years without knowing because I was just using the Nigerian mentality. In Nigeria, you don't really negotiate for your salary, right? Because there's so many people that labor is cheap, really, and the jobs are scarce. So if you really don't change your mindset and actually learn how things are done in certain places, I find that, I think for me, that's one of the reasons I feel like immigrants just get stuck. It's someone working for 15, 20 years and there's really nothing to show for it.
Maybe one last thing on that is, it's to learn to manage your manager, right? People assume that your manager knows exactly what you want. So I actually wrote a book about it called Managing Up for Career Progression. What are the things you need to do in a healthy environment when you and your boss are getting on? How do you get a promotion when you're getting on with your boss? How do you get a promotion when you're not getting on with your boss, right? Because, the boss is the barrier sometimes for you getting to the level. So people need to learn to manage their manager, learn to manage their performance review, and don't take it lightly that it's a waste of time. No, it's not. If you use it, do very well to your advantage. You need to use all the tools that are around. And maybe the last thing I'll say on this is that, and people don't believe this, but it's true, HR has an obligation to support you as much as they have an obligation to support the company. And they have to find the balance. It's not your problem if they don't know how to find it. If you're not getting what you want, go to HR, ask them, okay, this salary, that salary, how do we get the balance? Like, what's the salary structure? That's the question. They can either just say no, or they can tell you that they will give you more information. But 90% of the time, they give you more information if you ask. But many of us don't. We're not curious enough to ask. Me, first thing I will ask when I join the company, okay, what's the pay structure? What's the highest I can be paid in this current grade? So I went to one of the GlaxoSmithKline, and I went to my boss's boss. I said, I'm looking at the pay grade. You guys brought me on the top. So when will I get promoted? You guys looking at me like, you just started this week. I said, yes. He said, people are going to take 5 years. People normally take 5 years to get promoted. As I was leaving himself, I just went, that's not happening. That's not happening too. And it's true. 7 years I was there, I got 5 promotions.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he actively asked for each of those promotions?
Yeah. Actively asked, move laterally, change roles, look at the markets, programmers being outsourced to India, jumped into business analysis, moved from business analysis to project management to program management, and finally found my niche. That was it. It just kept, moving. Like reading the tea leaves. This job is going to going to India. It's going to be outsourced. So if I stay in, it's eventually going to be made redundant. Being able to get, you don't always get it right, but 90% of it we do. But that's why you have to be curious to understand. You have to look beyond. That's why if you don't love your company, it's hard. Because you don't know where the company is going, you wouldn't know. Like if you don't know that actually the company is trying to save money by outsourcing, you'll be sitting there thinking, I'm going to be here for life. And I'll be like, no, dude, we're outsourcing. Really? Yeah. But if you read the annual report, we told you. That's what we already told you. It's in public domain. That's what so it's a surprise to you because you're not reading the annual report. So I always say to people, you join a new company or even if you're in a company for a long time, every year, read the annual report. It's boring, but it's going to tell you where this company goes somewhere.
Yeah, that's a good point because a lot of people, I'm also talking to myself, are kind of like emotionally attached to like their job roles or the title, and we really don't know. It's very. You really need to deliberate to say, okay, you know what, I'm not my job. So if this job is not paying me now, what's the next thing that would pay me, right? People are like, oh, I'm a developer, and then they stay there because now developers are hot cake. They don't see that now it's something else, right? Yeah. They're just living in the past. So it actually makes a lot of sense. Did you ever try to start business or like do business at some point, like in the UK?
Business? My wife runs a business. So my wife runs a business in Nigeria. She has a music school and she runs it from here. That's a story for now.
Interesting. It's your biggest
15 years or so.
And actually running it from outside Nigeria?
Yeah. So we have 10 staff on the ground. And she also teaches, now with COVID, she also teaches remotely. Before she was just doing admin. Now she also teaches. So right now she's teaching her American student. So COVID opened the door. So it was a Nigerian-based business. And then with COVID, we became digital. So now we have students in Canada, in America, mainly Nigerian. Like we service the Nigerian diaspora. Yeah, but she loves it. So run that business with her. I'm invested in a water company. So there's quite a lot of businesses that I'm involved in. I'm coaching and mentoring, which is probably small now, but it's growing. I probably will be the place where I put a lot of energy into. I have some things back. So
Yeah. Oh no, I think at least talking to you, you have a wealth of information, right? Like just being like faith's very important, and then also like being in the marketplace, also like being at work, helping people get to like the top parts of their career. I think that's very important for us to do while not losing our personalities and our faith. So I think for me, my next question will be, what's like next for you? So after career, what are you planning for retirement? What's kind of like your plan for retirement? Do you want to move back to Nigeria at some point? Do you want to stay here and do other things? Yeah, what's really next for you?
So I think what's next for is, so I'll think, here's again, like one of those things where which God kind of whispers to you, like, God, like, Warren Buffett doesn't have to retire from it. You can never ask him to retire. He's 95 years old or however he is. You need to work because this is. So, whereas if you're in the corporate world, sooner or later they could tell you 65, 70, whatever the age is, they're going to tell you to stop. Yeah. I'm thinking at 70, do I really want to stop? So I need to build something that when I'm retired from corporate world, I have something in the way I can back. Like Warren Buffett said, if you're not making money, in your sleep, you're going to be poor for a long. So you need to find ways to make money in your sleep. You need to find ways to let your talents, your experience before you. So I think for me, maybe the long-term goal is to, at some point, leave the corporate full-time work and move more into a consulting role with my leadership academy, where I'm helping people even more vested in that. And then apart from that, as a Christian, I also love traveling to the nations. So I just came back from Malawi, where we built a local church. Malawi, we run a microfinance project out there. So, the world, I think I've been to about 48 different countries of the world. And I want to go, I think there'll be a lot of travel. There'll be a lot of exploring, a lot of ministry, of giving back, particularly in places where people are deprived. Doesn't matter which color of skin, but really, like, I got my inspiration from a guy who started something called Rooms to Read. He was a Microsoft VP. He went there or somewhere, Naples. He went to Naples, found a school in the mountain with no books, committed to buying books for that. Since then, he probably 35 million books around the world.
Wow.
He started from one holiday trip to an empty library. Took him there, said, there's no books here because you have a... He's wrestled with for a whole year, and then a year later, he started Rooms to Read. There's a book on Amazon, you can find it, called I Left Microsoft to Change the World. Yeah, it's an amazing story. It's very inspirational of people who kind of just abandon everything to help girls, primarily get books to the million, through friends, through partnerships, through network. Yeah, it's an amazing story. Great book, great read. So I think those things kind of inspire you to find out that God has blessed you for a reason. God has given you networks for a reason. People were donating air miles to him so he could travel around the world. People were donating books, fundraising. It was like when he even thought of giving up, they were like, no, you can't give up. We'll give you air miles to travel. Spend your own money. So, yeah, so I think that's probably what's next. So, retirement is probably somewhere semi-retired. And where do I want to retire? I think I'll have a foot in both camps, like I already have also. So, I'll be one of those people that would do winters in Nigeria and summers here.
That's the best idea. I said that's the best idea because the winter here is
So that would be kind of like a dream. But I don't know whether that's in my 60s or in my 70s, right? So I'm in my 50s. Yeah, so excited about what comes ahead. I just read in Forbes magazine, they listed out top 50 women over 50. And they were like, 50 is not the end of the road. Still 72. There's people like, Blue, Olon Shaw, Alakija, Dr. Obi. I mean, all these women, they're way past 50, but they're still trembling the nation, right? So why would I now go and pack myself or retire? So we have to contribute. So yeah, so that's what retirement looks like, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. I used to be under pressure like, I must reach Forbes 30 under 30. And I'm not sure we're heading like, okay, what if your 90 just starting at 30? What if that's when the thing that would actually propel you to the world starts? Or what if it's 40, right? You put yourself under pressure, do what you're not supposed to do to get to a list that is just superficial. So I think it's great that you're making lists for like, it's not just capping it at a certain age. And you can achieve anything to achieve and still be on whatever list you are at any age. So that's...
Yeah, and I think it was the guy who really made McDonald's famous. He was 58 or something before he made of what it is. So, life doesn't stop. It's just we walk through the opportunities that are presented. Opportunities as a security guard when you're in your early 20s or 50s to be on the board of a startup that just needs some advice. So so there's quite a lot that can still be done. And I look at people like Pat Otome, who is still, giving. How old is that guy? So when we were in university, we were learning from. Now still 40 years later, thereabout, he's still striving strong to really change the continent.
Interesting. I never thought about Pat Otome. He just has one image in my head. I didn't know he has been teaching and inspiring for that long.
Yeah. I mean, right now we sit in the same mentoring council for Get Funded Africa. I was shocked. We were on a 2-hour call teaching us about mentorship. And he was there. What? I had to ask the CEO that Pat Otome, that the Pat Otome.
Yeah.
I'm teaching this class, not me listening to, but how him. So not everybody has it. So
yeah. Nice. Wow, we've been talking for 2 hours. I just have to accept my pace that I love to talk a lot because interviews are usually planned of 45 minutes, but every one of them end up being over 2 hours. So, first of all, thanks for your time. I really appreciate talking to you and learning from you. But what would you say are like your final words? Is there anything that you wish maybe you could have done better? Or is there anything that you usually tell maybe new immigrants just coming in that if you knew earlier you would have done as soon as they came in? Or just like final stories?
I think immigrants today are much better off than when we first. 28 years ago, you couldn't just walk in and get a job in a company like Delivery Hero as an engineer. So I think I would say that the entry is easy, but the challenge is still the same. The challenge of, are you just going to chase money, which is what we are conditioned to do? Or are you going to be a transformational change maker? What do I mean by that? A lot of people, particularly in the UK, would go contracting because you're going to get more money. You can send money home. And then 20 years into a career, they're like, why am I not on the C-suite? Can't be a contractor and be on the C-suite, right? So I think you have to decide what kind of decisions do you want to be forming? Like, what are you trying to create for the future? And I've always been one of those people that I believed very much in corporate, and I always wanted to be helping drive corporate strategy. Not necessarily just for Black people, but just generally. Like, how do you drive business? I wanted to learn business and really drive business and be a change maker. Coming to the table, know that, people will invite you to speak at a conference because they know you add value. So I would say, anybody listening to this, no matter how you got abroad, no matter the reason for your Japa, do yourself a favor, curious about what are the true possibilities for you. Because if you understand that for yourself, you become unique, become an individual. Even if it takes, like my last job, or this job I'm in now, I had 10 interviews. Okay.
For this job?
Yeah, 10.
What?
Yeah. And there are many reasons why. And we know some of them, right? But if you can prove yourself to be technically competent, then even technical competence is not enough, right? When I was at Private Cooper, my boss said to me, your face doesn't fit. Right? I'm almost there. I'm going to be a partner. This is the last step. I was like, dude, no, it's not happening for you.
Your face doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Wow.
So no wonder that there's only 11 partners in the whole Big Four in the UK.
Yes.
Now, are we competent? Yeah. Do we believe in ourselves to be competent? Yeah. Do we have to become coconut, black on the outside, white on the inside to really get ahead? Some people do, but not everybody has to. All you have to do is just be good at what you do, believe in yourself, push those barriers down, and guess what? You will see it. Like, my final thoughts, like, this is like an indictment, really, that in the UK, there is no black CEO in the FTSE 100. So in all the top companies in the UK, there's not one black CEO. Male, sorry. There's female, but no male. I'm thinking, do you know how many black people are in the UK? You know, I'm not talking about Nigerians, Ghanaians, Jamaicans. So the system is rigged in such a way, and we're conditioned in such a way that we don't go for that top job, or we disqualify ourselves for that top job. So we end up kind of creating our own businesses that do well, but they're never gonna be in FTSE 100. And then all of a sudden you see someone like the guy who started Calendly. Boom! You see Flutterwave. Boom! So it proves the fact that, yeah, we can actually do this. We just have to believe in ourselves to be able to do it. And it's very challenging because it's lonely at the top. Like, it's very, 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 very low. You can't find people that you can go to and say, so how did you navigate this? Because they've never met a black person, unfortunately. So finding yourself in those places means you have to dig deep, learn from everybody around, and then give back. The more you give back, the further you go. The more you send the ladder down, you find the ladder to take you up. So, but that's my long final words. Be curious.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That was amazing.